All right, welcome back everyone for another deep dive. Today we're looking at Syria.
Okay.
Obviously a country that's been in the news for quite a while.
Right.
Yeah, lots of really intense stuff happening there for over a decade now.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the story that we're looking at today is about some very recent developments. And the sources that we're using for this one, there's a couple of different ones. We have one from the BBC, another from Al Jazeera, and then one from Reuters as well. And so they all have some, slightly different angles on this, slightly different information, but we're going to put them together.
Right.
And try to get a good picture of what's going on because it's moving really fast.
Yeah.
And what we're really looking at is Syrian rebels.
Okay.
And this group called Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. And they have reportedly captured the Syrian capital of Damascus.
Wow.
And this is huge.
I mean, that's a major development.
It is a major development.
Yeah.
And it happened really fast.
Yeah. I mean, just looking at these reports, it seems like things have just been snowballing. They took Aleppo, what was it, just a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, like very recent.
And now Damascus.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like, imagine if Washington, D.C. just suddenly fell to rebels,
Yeah,
That's the kind of impact we're talking about.
Yeah, it's really hard to wrap your head around just how quickly this has all happened. So, we're going to talk about Hayat Tahrir al-Sham in a little bit more detail.
Sure.
But first, let's just take a step back and think about what does it mean to actually have control of Damascus?
I mean, strategically, it's incredibly significant.
Right.
Damascus isn't just some city. I mean, it's the capital for a reason, right? It's a hub for all kinds of vital things. You've got your supply routes running through there, infrastructure, communication network. I mean, if you control Damascus, you basically control the entire country.
It's like the nerve center. Yeah. So one of the big questions that comes up in a lot of these articles is, where's Assad?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
What happened to him?
So the reports are, I mean, I don't want to say all over the place, but they're definitely conflicting.
Yeah.
Some are saying that he's fled the country. Some say that he's still holed up somewhere in Syria. The BBC actually has a quote from an unnamed source that says that he was seen in Latakia, which is a coastal city.
Okay.
But then Al Jazeera is reporting that he might have gone to Tehran. So
nobody really knows.
It's still unclear, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's safe to say that no matter where he is, this has got to be a huge blow to him.
I mean, losing both Aleppo and Damascus.
I mean, that's pretty much the whole game right there.
Yeah. How do you even come back from that?
Right. Like if you're Assad, I mean, it just looks really bad.
Yeah. So, okay, let's talk a little bit more about this group.
Okay.
Hayat Tahrir al-Sham.
Okay.
It sounds kind of intimidating.
Yeah. I mean, the name itself is pretty loaded.
Yeah.
And they've definitely got a complicated history. Depending on which source you look at, you're going to find some different perspectives on them. But I think the simplest way to put it is that they're a major force within the Syrian opposition.
Okay.
They've been fighting against Assad's regime for years, and they've been gaining strength and influence. And I think these recent victories are a testament to that.
Yeah. It makes me think about, back in 2011, when the Arab Spring started, and just how quickly things can change.
Right.
It's like all of a sudden, these regimes that seem so strong and so entrenched can just collapse.
Yeah, it's definitely a reminder that things are not always as stable as they might appear.
Yeah. So is this the end of Assad? Is this it?
I mean, it's hard to say for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's tempting to see this as a clear-cut victory for the rebels, and maybe the end of Assad's regime. But the reality is that Syria is still very much in flux. Even with the fall of Damascus, there are a lot of unknowns.
Okay.
And I think it's important to remember that there are other players in this conflict.
Right. It's not
just Assad versus the rebels.
Right. Okay.
There are other rebel groups. There are factions within the government itself.
Yeah.
And then you have all these external forces, countries like Russia and Iran, the U.S., Turkey, all of them are involved in one way or another. And they all have their own interests.
Yeah. So what does this all mean for Syria's neighbors?
I mean, it's a tough question. But I think it's important to think about this from a human perspective. The Syrian people have already been through so much years of war, millions of refugees, and now this. I mean, what does this mean for their future.
Right.
And then you have the neighboring countries, they're already struggling to deal with the refugee crisis. And this could potentially lead to even more people fleeing Syria. And then there's the risk of the conflict spilling over into those neighboring countries, destabilizing the entire region.
It's a lot.
It is. And then, of course, there's the global implications. I mean, this could affect everything from oil prices to the fight against terrorism.
Yeah. Okay, so just to kind of recap everything that we've talked about, we have Damascus, the Syrian capital, has fallen to Syrian rebels,
right,
including this group, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. Assad's fate is uncertain, and there's a lot of potential for this to get even more chaotic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Potentially a power vacuum. Lots of different groups vying for control, and it's really just a very unstable situation.
Yeah.
And it's hard to see where things are going to go from here.
I mean, one thing I think about is what happens to the average Syrian. I mean, their lives have been turned upside down for so long now. And with all this uncertainty, I worry about what the future holds for them.
Yeah, it's a really tough situation.
It is.
And I hope that everyone listening will keep learning about this.
Yeah.
Keep paying attention to it.
Yeah.
Because it's important.
Absolutely.
And it's not going away anytime soon.
No, this story's not over.
And we'll keep diving into it as it develops.
Sounds good.
So until next time, thanks for listening.